Insurance is one of the most confusing aspects of peer-to-peer car sharing. How do you insure your cars if you're renting out cars on platforms like Turo? Do you still need insurance if you've opted in for Turo protection packages? And what happens in the case that your car is in an accident, whether that accident is very minor, very severe, or if it results in some sort of casualty? The reality is, whenever it comes to insurance, there are more often more questions than answers, which is why I think it's incredibly important to make this video today. In this video, we're going to be sitting down with Rafi, who is the head of strategy for a company called Lula. And basically what Lula is it's a tech company that helps connect car sharing hosts and rental fleet owners with an insurance solution that works for them. The reason why this conversation is so important and so confusing is because of the fact that whenever we talk about insurance in the context of car sharing, you really have two different types of insurance. You have the protection packages that are offered by platforms like Turo, and in the case of Turo, you have a variety of different packages to choose from. Each costs you, the host, a different amount of money with each and every rental, and each package provides you with a different level of coverage. But the problem is these protection packages are just that, protection packages, and they are not an insurance solution that will provide you coverage to not only protect yourself, but also adhere to state and local guidelines. And because of this gap, there is a lot of confusion, and I can't tell you how often I get asked the question of, if I'm not going to be driving my cars for personal use, do I still have to get insurance for them? Or alternatively, people who feel as though they're paying for insurance twice, once through Turo's protection package and once through their insurance carrier. The point is, there's a lot of nuance here, and what makes it even worse is there's a lot of misinformation that gets circulated around car sharing and insurance. So I recruited Rafi from Lula to not only join us on the channel today to talk about Lula and the benefits of Lula, but to also give us some context as to how commercial insurance works in the context of car sharing. Now, I do want to preface this discussion by saying that this was not a paid interview. Lula actually reached out to me a couple of months ago to ask me for my insight and opinion on a new program that they were working on that's actually being released here in a few days. And being as though I am always eager to do my part in trying to make the car sharing community a better one, I was more than happy to sit down with Rafi and the Lula team in providing my insight and my opinion on the product. And as a result, we sat down for a number of conversations, and I felt like having Rafi on the channel to discuss Lula and commercial insurance would be a value add to any car sharing host out there. So whether or not you decide to go with Lula is totally up to you, but I just want to provide you all with clarity and different options out there if you're a car sharing host who's struggling navigating the insurance world, which I know is many of you, as I get dozens of different messages and emails every single day. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Rafi, the head of strategy with Lula, and we're going to be diving into all things Lula, commercial insurance, and protection packages. All right, well, it is great to have you here on the channel, and I'd love to kick things off by not only allowing you to introduce yourself to the audience, but also give an introduction to Lula, what you guys do, what the company is, and of course, how it can benefit to car sharing hosts in the car sharing community.
Yeah, Aubrey, thanks so much for having me. And before I jump into myself or Lula, I just want to say, thank you for what you're doing for the community. I've had a chance to watch a ton of your videos, and they're really awesome. And I know you have a ton of viewers, a ton of viewership. So thank you for that, and thank you for all your contributions.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for me, my name is Rafi. I work as the head of strategy and growth at Lula. I'm sure some of you guys may have heard of us. But Lula is a technology company, and we work with a series of different A-rated insurers and carriers to bring together insurance programs to market. One of our first insurance program was in the car rental space, and we're soon launching in partnership with CarSync an insurance program that specifically is designed for car sharing hosts. And so we're really excited to be launching that soon.
So, and I'm so glad that you mentioned CarSync, because a lot of people who watch my channel, even if they've just seen one or two videos, have probably heard me talk about CarSync. I feel like CarSync is like my second love. Like, I love CarSync. I think it's such a great value. And so to see that you guys are partnering with CarSync is very, very cool. Can you, and I know that we had spoken before this interview, but can you talk a little bit about what Lula is in the context of car sharing, specifically what you guys are launching with CarSync and how this is going to be a real value add for car sharing hosts moving forward?
Absolutely. So, CarSync, for those of you that are not familiar, is a fleet management software And as a car sharing host, you're able to connect, your car sharing platform account. So Turo, Get Around, Hire Car, you're able to connect that to your CarSync account. And it really helps you manage your vehicles, understand when they're on rent, off rent, what the revenue is associated with those vehicles. So what we're going to be doing with CarSync is launching an embedded insurance program where you could get access to insurance directly in the CarSync platform. You could also add and remove vehicles through their platform to the policy, as well as file claims and really manage all of your insurance needs. And that's all going to be powered by technology that Lula and CarSync are kind of integrating together in their platform.
So Lula is not a insurance company. This is something that's important for anybody who's watching this video or looking into Lula to understand. But can you kind of talk about what I know the topic of insurance with car sharing hosts is a very, very confusing topic because you have, the coverage that you have to have on your vehicles in order to legally drive them on the road. There's of course the issue of what happens in a worst case scenario. To add confusion to the entire mix, you have like Turo protection packages, which I think there's a lot of confusion in that of itself. And so, can you talk a little bit about the role that Lula plays with insurance, with Turo protection packages, and really just kind of its role in that dynamic, that triangle?
Absolutely. So what Lula does is we essentially work with our customers and with different folks in the marketplace to really understand what are your needs from an insurance perspective. And working backwards to kind of determine what your needs are, we'll look at what are the kind of vehicles that you have and how are you using those vehicles. So are you using them personally? Are you renting them out privately? Are you renting them out via a car sharing platform? And then we basically kind of put together all those needs and we take them to an insurance carrier and we say to the insurance carrier, can you guys design a specific coverage that covers all of these needs, or at least a portion of these needs? And then we actually get the policy. We as Lula get the policy. We're the primary policy holder on that policy that the insurance carrier will create. And then we sell, basically our technology and insurance, coverages to people by adding them as additional insured to the policy. And what's really beneficial about that is instead of you interfacing directly with a carrier, you now are essentially part of a pool of 10, 20,000 vehicles, all kind of under Lula's policy. And we're able to represent you, we're able to represent you to the carrier and able to get price discounts that you get as a 10,000 car account versus a 5 or 10 car account. Number one, and number two, we're really able to represent you and identify what are your needs and build programs that are specific for you.
Okay, so just to make sure that that I understand it correctly and everybody who's watching understands it correctly, whenever somebody puts their car on a car sharing platform like Turo, you of course have the protection package that Turo offers, but then you have to have that secondary, or I guess typically it's the primary coverage that you have to have in order to have your car legally ride on the road. And this is a pain point because many insurance companies like, State Farm, Progressive Esurance, they don't allow for car sharing hosts to have their cars on the platform. So what Lula does is you find insurance carriers that you're basically the middleman for insurance carriers that do allow this, and you facilitate that transaction between the customer and the insurance company so that cars are having the proper insurance to be legally registered on the road, and also of course to adhere to Turo terms of service as well. Is that correct?
In many ways, that's exactly correct. And if you take a step back, one of the questions that we get from car sharing hosts all the time is if I'm opting into a protection plan with Turo or with GetAround or one of these platforms, why do I need a umbrella coverage on my vehicle? Why do I need, a primary policy on my vehicle? And the short answer is that in most states across the United States, having a form of car insurance is required by law, and the protection plan that you're getting through Turo or through GetAround will only cover the vehicle while it's on rent. So as a guiding principle, everyone, regardless of how that vehicle is being used, everyone needs some form of insurance on the vehicle. Once you decide and realize, okay, I need insurance on the vehicle, then the question is, what kind of policy should I get, and what kind of coverage should I get? And you kind of answer that based on your needs. And what we saw that was happening in the marketplace with Turo Host and with car sharing host is that they were kind of double paying for insurance because a typical policy will cover the vehicle 24/7. But while the vehicle's on rent, you're also, sort of paying Turo for their protection plan. And so what ends up happening is you're essentially paying for insurance that you don't really need. So we as Lula essentially, went to a carrier that we work with and we said, "Hey, is it possible to create an insurance program that only covers the vehicle while it's off rent? This way people don't have to double pay for insurance essentially." And so this is the program that we're launching with CarSync. We call it ORP, which stands for Off Rental Program Powered by Lula. And it only covers the vehicle while it's off rent, and it covers up to 300 miles per month for business use only. And business use, we're kind of defining as any activity that is used in furtherance of business activity. So that could be delivering the vehicles for pickup and drop offs, taking the vehicle to a car wash, to the car mechanic, driving in the lot if you're parking the vehicle or kind of moving it around. And we feel that this is a really good coverage and a really good option for Turo Host because it's going to be the most affordable insurance, protection plan on the market or insurance coverage on the market. It's only going to be $79 per month per vehicle. And it allows them to not essentially overpay and double pay for insurance that they're rarely ever using.
In your view, as somebody who works in this industry and, of course, knows a lot about insurance and car sharing, what do you think? Like, what are the key differences between a personal policy and a commercial policy? Because I know there's a lot of melding of both in the car sharing world where some hosts have commercial, some hosts have personal, and it can get really confusing, quite honestly.
Yeah, it really is confusing. And unfortunately, I wish I had a better answer, but it's not so black and white as to, do I need a commercial insurance policy or do I need a personal insurance policy? Because really, it's a question of how are you using your vehicle and is the usage of that vehicle covered under the coverage that you have or under the policy that you have? So if you had to, think about it, you should figure out, are you using your vehicle to rent privately? Are you renting on a car sharing platform? Are you using the vehicle personally, like going to the grocery store or going to the movies or driving to work? Are you using the vehicle to simply deliver it between pickups and drop offs? And based on your needs, you want to get the kind of coverage and policy that works for you. And sometimes you may actually need two different policies on the same vehicle to kind of, have an aggregate amount of different usages that will be covered based on your needs. So let's talk about ORP powered by Lula, which is the program I mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
With that, specific program, it is a commercial insurance coverage, and it only covers the vehicle while it's being used off rent for business activities, which in this sense would be commercial activities. So if you're using the vehicle to drive to the grocery store or to drive to work, this program would not be for you because that would be an excluded kind of activity. Other activities that would be excluded, for example, is if you're using the vehicle to do Uber and Lyft, we wouldn't cover those activities. If you're using the vehicle, let's just say to make deliveries for Domino's or for a pizza store or food deliveries, we wouldn't cover that kind of activity. It simply covers business use for your Turo business or for your car sharing business up to 300 miles a month.
And you had mentioned a lot about the idea that insurance, whether you go with a tech company like Lula, or if you go with more traditional insurance companies, or a true commercial policy like a more traditional one that we've seen over the years before car sharing, is you really have to choose one that's best for you. But with what you see at Lula, who is your, I guess, like typical customer? Like, what do you see as far as like how many cars they have, what their goal is? Can you give us an idea of what type of customer typically finds Lula really valuable? That way, maybe my audience can relate to that type of dynamic.
For sure. So we have two different programs at Lula. We have our primary fleet insurance coverage program, which covers car rental agencies and folks that are renting vehicles privately. And then we have this new program that we're launching, and we're actually launching it on December 10th. So just in a couple days away, where it's going to be covering people that are specifically using it for car sharing. And if you meet either of those two requirements, then we likely have a program that fits your needs. If you are using the vehicle personally, or if you're using it for other kind of commercial activity beyond car rental or beyond car sharing, then we don't have a program for you at the moment. But what we do like to do is we always like to collect the needs of our customers, because we're able to work with carriers to launch new programs over time that fit your needs. So, for example, one of the things that a lot of Turo hosts have told us is, hey, ORP is probably not a great fit for me, because 50% of the time I use my vehicle personally, and 50% of the time I'm using it to rent on a car sharing platform. And so we're actually taking that data, and we plan on working with our insurance carriers to hopefully develop a third program that might really meet the needs of, hosts that are using it both personally and commercially via Turo.
I mean, I think I mean, full disclosure, I love what Lula does. I think that this is such a needed service, because I know back whenever I started car sharing, you had to really kind of do it like as you're first getting started and like you're getting into the weeds of like commercial insurance. It was so confusing and the water was so muddy that you really had to kind of take a gamble in which policy you chose until you were more solidified and had the proper LLC and documents ready to go for a true commercial policy. So I think the value that y'all provide is so great. But I think that third policy or the third program that you're talking about would be a huge value add, because so many people that I talk to, they get started with Turo with their personal car, or they'll have like their car that they drive and then the car that their spouse drives, and they're kind of mix them up. Or what so many hosts do is they drive whatever car is available. And whenever you're only like you're driving the car that's available for personal use, that commercial insurance aspect gets the line gets blurred very, very quickly.
Yeah, and we certainly hear that all the time. The best advice that I could give to anyone listening here is to really be honest and transparent with your carrier about how the vehicle is being used, and to make sure that any activity that you're using the vehicle for is actually covered. Because what we've heard from a lot of hosts is that they've had to operate in this gray area where they might not lie to the insurance company, but they're not exactly telling the truth. And usually that ends up catching up with you. If you think about, for example, if you're using the vehicle for an activity that's not covered, and you hit a third party, that third party may report the claim or the damages directly to your insurance carrier. And so if you think about the worst case scenario, it really can mean two things. Number one, you get into an accident or an incident that's not covered, and that could be really detrimental. One, just in terms of protecting your own asset, but two, if you're involved in any kind of major incident where a third party is, God forbid, there's a fatality or public roads are damaged, you could be in major legal trouble. But secondly, if your carrier finds out that you're not using the vehicle for the intended use, number one, that could be considered insurance fraud. But number two, they may decide to drop your policy. You'll have a gap in coverage, and your business will essentially shut down. So the best advice that I could give when you speak with an insurance agent or any kind of company in this space is be very honest and transparent about how you're using your vehicle, and let them find the right protection and the right coverages that meet your needs. So that way you don't have to operate in the gray area anymore. And that's really what we're trying to do for a host is we take what the customer needs and we work backwards from there, work with our insurance carriers to introduce a program, and then provide, a solution in the market that number one is affordable, but number two offers you the protections that you need so you could sleep at night, your asset is covered, and you don't really have to worry about, this game that many people have been playing, especially as they scale up. And as soon as you get to 5, 10, 15, 20 vehicles, you have a lot of money at risk. Your assets are worth a lot, and it's really important that you protect them and your business in the right way.
I could not agree more. I think that it's especially with, car sharing becoming so much more common. Like I go back to like whenever I first started with Turo, nobody knew what Turo was. And you would describe it to them and like I feel like nobody knew what it was. Whereas nowadays, if I tell somebody about Turo, there's a good portion of the time where the person I'm speaking to has not only heard of Turo, but has used it. And so the insurance companies are more aware of what Turo is, and they're keeping an eye on their insurance holders to make sure that they aren't violating the terms of service of that policy. And so I think everybody,
Mhm.
there's just too much risk associated with going in this gray area.
Absolutely. And one of the neat things about what Lula did before we kind of entered this space is we actually spoke with representatives from Turo. We spoke with a ton of hosts. We showed them drafts of what our policy would look like. We even showed it to you, Aubrey, before we launched. And so we're fairly confident that this program really does satisfy your needs because we've been able to work with you guys to design it and to really make sure that it's covering the intended usages of that vehicle. And that's sort of also the beauty of our CarSync partnership is that we know many hosts are managing their vehicles in CarSync. And so we thought that if we embed the insurance program directly in their platform and give you a way to file claims, to add vehicles to the policy, it would just be another value add in terms of making your life easier and having a more seamlessly integrated solution to manage all of your insurance needs. One of the funny things is, especially as I speak with some of the new hosts, is they might say, I have two vehicles that are with this, policy, maybe Geico, another three that are with State Farm. I have one with Lula, one with this person, one with that person. And to be honest, it's a major headache. And we're really trying to solve that headache to make your life easier, not just to give you the best protection plan and the most affordable protection plan, but to save you time and headache in terms of managing all your insurance needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I couldn't agree more. I see it all the time. To your to your exact point is like I actually talked to somebody recently this week that has 15 cars and they're across 5 different policies. And I'm just like, not only is there, of course, a risk associated with that, but I would forget which cars are on which insurance policies. It makes it so much harder to get the insurance in order to get inspections done, or if there's an issue. It's like once you start scaling your fleet and productivity and just efficiency is so important that having to like scour the internet of okay, which insurance policies is this car on, and like how do I get access to this document? It becomes messy very, very quickly.
Yeah, it really does. And so that's kind of the beauty of what we're doing is we allow you to add all your policies. There's no games that you have to play. And the other nice thing about Lula is, as I mentioned in the beginning, is that you're joining a program with thousands of other hosts. So in terms of the pricing, you're not getting pricing as a 5 car account or a 10 car account. You're getting pricing of a 10,000 car account, which one makes it really the most affordable program on the marketplace, at least that we're aware of. It starts at it's actually only $79 per month per VIN. There's no hidden costs. There's no program fees. There's no software fees. It's just a flat $79 a month. But the second benefit in terms of being able to bundle with 10,000 other vehicles is that when you file a claim on the policy, it's now one claim across 10,000 vehicles. So you don't have to be worried about, oh, I filed one or two claims. The insurance company might drop me, my pricing might go up. Obviously we do look at loss runs and we do look at, are you using the vehicle, in a safe way and, protecting the asset and renting to good renters. But you don't have to be worried that, oh man, I filed one claim. I'm now going to get dropped by the insurance carrier and my premiums are going to go up.
And I'm actually really glad you mentioned that because that pivots to the next topic that I wanted to discuss, which is the issue of accidents and claims, because of course that's why we have insurance to begin with. And this is where I think there is a lot of confusion with like where Turo plays its role and where like companies like Lula play their role and where even just traditional insurance companies play their role as well. Is like it's always the topic of like, well, which protection package should I get? How does that correlate with my insurance? And so one of my questions that I had for you is it worth it to go into the 90% plan and then file a claim through the insurance that a host holds? Whether that, I mean, of course, with Lula, they wouldn't cover it because they don't cover whenever the cars are on rentals. But if they're with a different insurance company, is it worth it to do that and just lean on your insurance company to file those claims rather than relying on Turo?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that question, Aubrey, because it's definitely a misconception in the marketplace about how to manage your insurance needs and where and when you should file a claim with what carrier. And it's definitely a fairly nuanced and complex topic. I think the short answer is, and I'll kind of decouple it from Lula and maybe some other carriers, but In talking about Lula, our program, like you mentioned, is specifically designed for off rental activity. So anything that happens while a vehicle is rented out through Turo or through another car sharing platform, we will not cover that activity. And that's why we've been able to, really create a program with such an affordable price point because you're only paying for what you need. So if you think that, let me opt into the 90% plan and if an incident happens, I could file it with Lula, you definitely cannot do that. You should pick the protection plan that really, makes sense for the type of vehicle and how much you want to pay a deductible out of pocket. And it almost has nothing to do with the protection and coverage that you have while the vehicle's off rent from Lula. Now, in terms of other commercial carriers and other policies, I think the first question that you need to ask yourself is, does this commercial policy cover car sharing? And usually the answer is no. So if you call up your carrier, which I would recommend you do, and you should say, hey, I'm renting out my vehicles on Turo. If an incident happens while on Turo, will you cover the claim? If the answer is no, then that's your answer right there. You can't rely on being able to file a claim there. And so you'll have to file that policy with Turo or that incident with Turo. If the answer is yes, we do cover claims that happen on car sharing, then you might want to just be aware of what your loss runs are. And essentially, your loss runs, you can look at how much premium you're paying to the insurance carrier versus how much they had to pay out in losses for damages that you may have incurred while you're on the policy. And there is a risk that if your loss runs get too high, they may drop you from the policy altogether. So when it comes time to renewal, they may say, hey, we're not going to renew your policy. Or they may decide to renew you, but your pricing may go up. And usually it's your pricing on every single vehicle. So the best advice that I could recommend is talk to your carrier, see what's covered versus not covered, and really keep track of how much you're paying them versus how many claims you're filing and how much losses they're filing. And there's no right answer, but you don't want to get too high in terms of the losses relative to the premiums because then all of a sudden you're not a profitable customer for that carrier and they're either going to drop you or raise your prices because they are in business to make money too.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to touch on that because I think, and I know before the interview, you and I were talking about how a lot of hosts do enter commercial insurance with this mindset of like, now I get to take, 90% of my Turo earnings. I won't have to worry about Turo claims again. And that just, I would say the vast majority of the time is just not the case. And you do still have to lean on Turo insurance to some degree.
Yeah, and the reality is usually shortcuts don't work, and there's a reason why Turo created the protection plans that they have. It's because it covers hosts for when incidents happen while the vehicle's on rent. And typically, from what I've seen in the marketplace, and I certainly haven't seen every single policy and coverage type out there, but typically your best bet is to file, any incidents directly with Turo because they know that it's going to happen. They're not raising your prices. Their prices are kind of flat across the platform. And in fact, they're the ones that are bringing you the renters. So they also take responsibility and accountability for that. And that's why they offer you the coverage that you need to make sure that your asset is protected while it's on rent.
As far as either just like insurance, commercial insurance goes, or Lula, do you feel like there's anything that you particularly believe people should know that maybe they don't already know already?
Yeah, definitely. So one thing that I'll say is, and I think this is especially true in the car sharing community. The community itself is really wonderful, and it's kind of ironic because everyone is quote unquote helping their competitors be successful. They're telling you, Aubrey, I know that you have a very successful Turo business, but you have a whole channel helping your competitors in a way also be successful. But the one thing I would caution is there's a lot of stuff out there on videos, on Facebook groups, on Reddit that really is not true and not accurate. And especially when it comes to insurance, you really need to be careful about what the source is and who the source is. And, almost assume that it's not true until proven otherwise. And your best bet is, you could give us a call. You could email into Lula's support line and ask your insurance questions directly to a company that deals with insurance. We have licensed insurance agents that can answer all your questions. Disclaimer, I am not one of them. So if you wanted to ask me very specific questions about your policy or your coverage or our policy, I would just defer that conversation to one of our licensed insurance agents. And you could ask all the questions that you want. They're happy to answer those questions. And you'll usually find that some of the stuff you read on the web is not accurate. And you just don't want to rely on that information because you don't want to be in a situation where your vehicle is not covered. And all of a sudden, your $30,000 vehicle has a total loss and there's no one to pay for it because you weren't using it for activities that were covered, or there was something that sort of got you in that scenario.
I think that is excellent advice because I absolutely agree. I think that as car sharing has gotten larger, there's a ton of misinformation out there. And I think it really puts people in a dangerous position because so often, people are reading what they see on Reddit and on Facebook and not actually reading what they are seeing and hearing from Turo themselves or from insurance companies. And so they're taking this huge gamble with really only hearing a portion of the story. And I always tell people, read the Turo terms of service. And I would go as far as to say that people should also read the terms of service of their insurance company as well.
Absolutely. And one other thing that I want to just touch on as well is how to navigate the claims process, because ultimately, the product of insurance is usually when something goes wrong, is the insurance carrier there to help you navigate that claim and get your vehicle back on the road as soon as possible. So I'll just give a little bit of advice from my experience and my perspective, which is when it comes to the claims process, the best thing that you could do is get all the information that you could to the carrier about the incident, because they can't actually process the claim until they have all the information. And that might include the date of the incident, the time, a police report, pictures of the damages, any kind of contextual evidence that they would need. And then they would go ahead and be able to process that claim. And one of the things that we've done at Lula, and you could access this on our portal, or with CarSync, you'll be able to access it directly on their platform, is we have a digital claims process where we actually ask you everything that the carrier will need to process a claim. And you can't actually, quote unquote, file and submit a claim until you've finished answering all the questions that they need. We then deliver that information to our third party adjuster, who could then process your claim. And we have some of the fastest claims rates in the industry because of the way that we're accelerating information collection, to then just begin the process of actually looking at the claim and reviewing it and getting someone paid out if they need to get paid out. So that's the best advice I could give you as it comes to claims.
Very cool. I think that's excellent advice. And so I guess the last kind of final question that I have is there anything before we close things out that you want the viewers to know about specifically Lula, about either just the company itself, what you guys provide, what you can provide to Turo hosts, just really anything you want them to know is now your time to share it.
Yeah, definitely. So, I'll tell you personally, one of the reasons why I joined Lula is really because of the values of the company. And our number one value is to be customer obsessed. And I've kind of touched on this throughout the interview, but the ethos of that value really comes true in our day to day. And everything we do is really about servicing our customers, because we believe that in the long run, servicing our customers will ultimately lead, to us growing the business and having a profitable business. And so there are certainly needs that you guys have that are not being covered by us or by other carriers. And even if we don't have the right program or product for you today, I would strongly recommend reaching out to us, reaching out to our support team or to one of our sales folks, and letting us know how we could better service you. So that way we could create new programs that specifically fit your needs. And we'll kind of evolve in that way in partnership with our customers over time. I think the ORP program that we're launching is a great example of it, where our original program was for car rental agencies. We had a few thousand hosts tell us, well, hey, this program doesn't really make sense for us because we're double paying for coverage. And we're able to create a new program that's significantly more affordable than our existing program. And I think, we'll continue to do that. So if you have any insurance needs, definitely reach out to us. We're happy to answer them. And hopefully we can bring new products to the market that fit your needs.
Excellent. And then for anybody that wants to reach out and wants to inquire, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, so you could visit our website lularentals.com/ORP, where you could fill out a sign up form, and we'll have a sales agent reach back out to you, and that's specific for our ORP program. You could also just check out our website lularentals.com. There's a phone number there that you could reach out to, and I'm sure we'll put it in the comments and description so anyone could have easy access to that. And we'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. Well, yes, exactly. All of that information will be down in the description below. And so be sure to check that out. Rafi, it was great to have you, and I really, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Now, with that being said, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I know that the world of insurance can be extremely daunting, confusing, and hard to navigate. So hopefully this video provided you with at least a little bit of clarity into how this world works and can help you make the right decisions for you and your fleet as far as insurance goes. Like always, if you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.